Hello, friends. Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. We are back in our humble setting here. Glad to have you with us this morning. Pray you're doing well. There is goodness in your days. Hello, everyone. Hey, Fanny Faye Davis. Great to see you here this morning. Makes my day. Hello, everybody. Good gravy. Sometimes when you look at yourself in the live stream, you realize you need a haircut. And I'm getting one today. So, hey, Karen, good morning to you. Hope your day is going well. There's goodness in it. Enjoying this little bit of a warm up that we got going. 60 degrees out. I'm gonna try and get out and get a walk in at some point, maybe ish. I don't know. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, everyone. Got a couple more people coming along, and we will get going. So glad you're all here. Hey, Cecile, good morning to you. Hope you're having a great day. I know it is a great day. Good morning, everybody. All right, let's get going. It is the 16th day of November on this 11/11, and I am glad you're with us. I'm glad you're here. Donna, good morning to you. I am glad that each one of you are finding your way to this hour, this place, this second, this moment, and know that you will be prayed for today, because I'm going to pray for all those who might hear these words, and that there may be blessing and goodness in your day. As as we come into this season of Thanksgiving, and we'll talk more about Thanksgiving next week for sure. But there is this idea that comes from Paul's letters in Thessalonians, of which I think is actually at the heart of Thanksgiving. So we're going to kind of, maybe we'll start here, and maybe we'll talk about it some more next week. But I want to, and it's called the catechon or the cataton, depending on how you do the Greek PC, the Greek parts there. That in it there is this notion, there is this way of restraint. So this comes from Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians, and it says this. So he says this, and you know what is now restraining him, so that he may be revealed when his time comes. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, but only until the one who now restrains it is removed. So Paul's writing to the Thessalonians is all about, it's kind of a lot of, it's a lot of end times language. And a lot of the end times language that you get out of Paul is around this coming of the Antichrist, this coming of the thing that's going to, the opposite of the Christ, that is going to kind of break the shalom of the world. But breaking the shalom of the world is so that it may be defeated. And that actually this line, this scripture that I share with you, and we don't need to get into all the goopy theological stuff around it, but just to say that this line, this has actually been inculcated in the church over 2,000 years. That it actually is at the heart, this notion of restraint. In fact, we think about restraint as one of the virtues. Temperance is really the idea of restraint, and so I want to talk about this because I think in many ways that if we all talk about like we should be grateful or being grateful is good, and when we can be grateful, there's goodness in being grateful, and our life is better when we are grateful for the things that we have and for the things that, and our life is worse when we don't. All of that is, and I think all of that is true, but that's often a little, kind of a little shoulding kind of thing. We end up shoulding all over ourselves with kind of gratitude, like, oh, I should be more thankful. I should be. But what's at the heart of gratitude? What's at the heart of everything that we have or don't have is actually, I think, this notion of restraint. That it's actually at the heart of this virtue of temperance, if you will. That, see, we're going to get a little heady theological today. Don't worry, we're going to end someplace cool, I hope. But we're this notion that we're in at the depths of things. If we are nothing but an unbridled bag of wants and impulses, if we are just wants and impulses, and there is no restraint, there's an impossibility to be grateful, right? Because there's just, no matter how much you manage to acquire, or no matter how many good things seem to happen to you, there's always another impulse that follows it, right? Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm filled with all kinds of impulses. Like, look, shiny. Like I'm constantly like, oh, that's cool. Oh, I'd like one of those. That's good. One of our church members, Garrett, brought us donuts yesterday. Donuts from PVD Donuts. PVD Donuts. They have literal pieces of bacon on top of the donut, on top of the maple, on top of the best donut you ever had. Holy smokes. So restraint, not so much. But it was delicious. But you know what one giant beautiful donut tasted like? It tasted like another one. That's right. That's what it tasted like. That actually, if we are going to be thankful, before we can even get to Thanksgiving, before we can even get to next week, where we have to start with is restraint. And this sense from Thessalonians is about there's a lot of assumed in this line, but it's about, and what is now restraining him. Well, who's him? The Antichrist. And this is said as kind of inside baseball. It's like, oh, who's restraining the Antichrist, but actually the text never tells us. So there's always within kind of a couple thousand years of Christendom. And I think within our own life, there's been this great, and this is true on a personal level and on a corporate level, but in the church, there's been all kinds of people wondering about who is this, who is the restraint? What is the restraint? What is it that restrains the outbreak of chaos in the world? What is it who is the restrainer? And in fact, many parts of Christian monarchs, when kings would be crowned by the church back in those days, which is about 1,000 years of the church, by the way. You think like that's old-timey days? That's actually most of Christianity, was the king being crowned by the church. And one of the titles that often a king would take up is he that restraineth. That the job of the king, the job of the executive function in the corporate body is to restrain the chaos monster. This mystery of lawlessness. I mean, I love that line from Paul, this mystery of lawlessness, because doesn't it feel that way? It feels that way to me, that there's like, wow, why should these things break out? I mean, we look at the lawlessness of the world. We look at Israel and Palestine. We look at the cruelty. We look at Ukraine. We look at the cruelty. We look at our own streets and the savagery of fentanyl and the cruelty. Like we can look around and we can see this mystery of lawlessness. It's like, how does this work? How does it all go so broken? How is it all so wrong? How does this thing end up getting unleashed? And it's not just about self-control. This is the thing. If it was just about self-control, then the willful of us would run things, and the unwillful of us would not. But that's actually not what happens, is it? That actually things, if it was just about who had the capabilities of self-control, then the world would be a right place, because those are the people that would ascend, and those are the people. But it's not just about that. It's actually about a much larger impulse and a much larger movement to which we can submit ourselves to, because the one who restrains is not just us. It's all the hosts of heaven that knows what's good for us. It's all those. It's our church community who loves us and will hold on to us when we find ourselves in despair, when we find ourselves eating all the cookies, when we find ourselves in need of love and encouragement. It is in fact the very foundation of what it means to be powerful, is actually our ability to submit ourselves in some humility to the one that restrains. Not just again, it's not just up to us. When Christ teaches the Sermon on the Mount, I think one of the most misunderstood lines in the Sermon on the Mount is, "The meek shall inherit the earth." Now, meekness in our modern parlance is much more about, we understand it, much more about like, it's all right, go okay, kind of wimpy and treacly, and like, oh, it's all right, you can have the seat on the bus, it's okay, But that's not at all what meekness is. Meekness was actually a quality of a knight. And in fact, knights were measured, and it was actually a sought after quality of a knight over the life of and again, this was true for nearly 1,000 years. The knights kind of come into being, and they kind of have their flourishing in kind of the 14th, 15th century, but they're around a long time, and this notion of chivalric value is around for a long time, and it draws on the Sermon on the Mount about how we are to be in the world, and that the knight is the kind of the pinnacle of like how we are to be in the world, because nobody is more worldly than a knight, because they got to smash people in the face with a hammer, and at the same time, no one is meant to be more transcendent of the world than the knight. And so this tension we actually find in this line, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." That meekness is not, as we understand it now in 2023, is like, oh, it's okay, and kind of fearful and incapable of doing anything. Meekness, when you kind of scratch the word and look at what they were talking about, 500, 1,000 years ago, they were talking about the ability to do damage. The ability that basically the way it gets translated or the way it gets explained is one who has a sword and chooses not to use it. What do we call that? We call it restraint, right? We call it temperance. That one who has the ability to lash out and doesn't. One who has the ability to do real violence in the world and doesn't. One of the problems is we don't take seriously enough our ability to do damage in the world, how much our word matters, how much our actions matter, how much what we actually do matters to the people who care for us, for the people who love us, people who are to the left and right of us. We actually abrogate our power and think, oh, well, we'll just be nice. Or we abrogate all of the wants and our desires, and we kind of push them at the edge. We ignore them. We say we don't have them, because often they're unsightly, right? Like, often we do want to hit somebody in the head with a sword. Often we do want to kind of launch ourselves into despair. Often we do want to tune that guy up that just took our parking space. And that what we often do, we'll push that down, we'll push it away, and rather than truly say we have the power to do that, I have the power to go up there and drag that guy out of his car by his hair, but I choose not to. You see the difference? You see the difference? Because in one, we're just buying off the devil with a little bit of willpower. With the other, we are looking him in the face and saying, "Not today, Satan." My friend Jeremy has that hat, and I think he has the hat and the shirt, which is just hilarious. I love it. But this notion that we actually that restraint is not about not confronting the Antichrist or just pushing our devils to the side or just kind of putting the things that would afflict us away, but it's actually, as the Thessalonians text is, it is being about the business of staring down the devil and saying no. It is being about the business of staring down the Antichrist and saying no. This is what meekness really looks like. It's not just self-control. It's not just counting to 10 and Musa. It's not just tempering our anger and our outbursts, but is actually owning the fullness of the power, the fullness of what they might be, the fullness of what those are, and openly and fully restraining them. Because, friends, if we look at our world, if we look at our work, if we look at our life, if we look at what surrounds us, the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. It was at work 2,000 years ago. It's at work now. But only by actually removing the restraints. And that doesn't mean letting it run wild, but that actually means removing our denial of it, removing the fact that we might not even like ourselves because of the unseemly things, that exist within us. The Father Mulcahy from MASH, like, oh, this is most unseemly. Like, well, we need to stop being outraged by what we find in our own heart. We need to stop being outraged by what might pop into our head, because what happens is when we don't contend with them, just as the great Carl Jung said, that which we do not address in our shadow, we will experience as fate. Friends, you are fated for great things. You are fated for beauty. You are fated for the love of the one who made you. You are not fated to be run around by these devils. So I invite you, as we get ready to move towards Thanksgiving, that we might move into true restraint, and we might take up our regal title, the title of we as sons and daughters of the Most High, sons and daughters of the King, that we might take up our title of being he or she that restraineth, as we have been ordained by God to do. C.S. Lewis puts it this way, and he puts it with, and he says it better than anybody. So I want to remind you of your office, remind you of your place in the restraining of the hells of the world, not as a way of living out the Marge Simpson kind of way of just push it down, Lisa, but of truly staring down that which would come into our focus, that which would come into our arena, and saying, no, not today, Satan. Here's C.S. Lewis. The knight is a man of blood and iron, a man familiar with the sight of smashed faces and the ragged stumps of lopped-off limbs. He is also a demure, almost maiden-like guest in a hall, gentle, modest, unobtrusive. He is not compromised or a happy mean between ferocity and meekness. He is fierce to the nth, and he is meek to the nth. The man who combines both character, the knight, is not a work of nature, but of art. Of that art, which has human beings instead of canvas or marble for its medium. Friends, you are a work of art. The hands of the Master is upon all that you do and all that you are, and that there are things that in being taken away make that glorious work all the better and all the more beautiful. That you may be fierce to the nth, and you may be meek to the nth degree in your life, and that in it step into the true challenge of the things that would tear you down, and know true gratitude and true thankfulness as we approach this Thanksgiving next week. Peace and grace to you, my friends. It is a joy. We have Stewardship Sunday coming up this Sunday, the opportunity to offer our pledges and gifts and to talk about what it means for us to be stewards of our days in this and our church in such a time as these. It is my hope you have a great weekend, and we'll pick it up next week, next Tuesday, with another 11:11.